We'll call to order the regular meeting of the Eastpointe Community Schools Board of Education, October 10th, 2022 at 6:32. Please call the roll.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Roscoe.
Here.
Ms. Rayford.
Here.
Mr. Grunberg.
Here.
Mr. Vita is excused, and Dr. Early here.
If we could all stand for the pledge, Dan will lead us.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we continue on with the agenda, I'd like us to just take a moment in honor of our fallen or deceased board member, Keith Ward, who passed away this past Thursday. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Support.
Please call the vote.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Ms. Rayford.
No.
Dr. Early. Yes. Mr. Grunberg.
Yes. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Place forth the motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Support.
Please call the vote.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Ms. Rayford.
No.
Mr. Grunberg.
Yes.
Dr. Early, yes.
Next, we have superintendent's report. Superintendent Gibson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I'd like to welcome to the podium Valerie Jens, the principal of the Early Learning Center, Heather Agueros, principal of Forest Park Elementary School, and Kristen Crawford, principal of Crescentwood Elementary School, who will be sharing with us more about their parent involvement as well as literacy plans at their respective schools.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having us here this evening. I'm Valerie Jens. For those of you that don't know, I'm at the ELC. And this is Kristen Crawford. She's at Crescentwood. And Heather Agueros. She's at Forest Park. I did not bring my glasses, so we'll see how this goes. So first I want to talk about some of the parent engagement activities that we've been doing at the Early Learning Center. Every year we do home visits with our families. It's part of the GSRP requirement, and we also have it made it a requirement for our 3-year-old program as well that we are expanding and growing this year. Last year we had 1 3-year-old classroom. 2 3-year-old classrooms. This year we have 3 3-year-old classrooms, and last year we had 7 GSRP and we have 8 GSRP, so that's the 4-year-old classroom. Great Start Readiness Program. So we do the home visits, make that connection with the families early on, right at the very beginning of the school year, go to their homes, visit them in their place where they're comfortable, meet the child, and build that relationship with the child right away. We also have our dojo connection. Does that say 82%? 92. Sorry. 92% of our families are connected via dojo. So we have great participation with dojo, with communicating with our families back and forth. We also have the monthly school newsletter that, Connie, my secretary, creates and sends out for the families. Our back to school event was great. We had 108 students that came through and attended. Got some backpacks, some books, some little activities to take home with them, met all the teachers, saw their classrooms. It was a really fun event. What we started new this year, which we're really excited about, is the parent engagement activity for ECS, which is our early childhood special education classes. And we have three classrooms, which is 5 sections because they're half-day sections. So we have 3 a.m. sections and 2 p.m. sections. We have 9 scheduled events throughout the school year, and we did our first one, was it last week? And maybe the week prior. And we had 12 parents that attended, and they were very excited. One of the dads left early, and as he was walking out, he stopped in and saw Connie in the office, and he said, "I'm sorry I have to leave early, but I'm definitely coming back for more." So that was great. That was great to hear from him. Some upcoming events that we're having, we're going to have a field trip. We're going to the Orchard, Westview Orchard, coming up real soon, and we're going to have a trunk or treat the end of October as well. I don't know how to use this thing. Nope, I went backwards. Sorry about that. All right, so Forest Park. I'm going to turn around because that's a little small. Forest Park has some, they have monthly newsletters as well, just as Crescentwood does too. Principal monthly parent breakfast, muffins with mom, a lot of activities with the families. The evening events, Halloween dance, I'm assuming is coming up. I don't know the date of that, but 27th. So come and dance. Gizmo game night, holiday craft event, literacy night, hands-on science night. Lots of fun things going on at Forest Park. There's a lot of celebrations of learning going on there as well. Parent meetings with the at-risk social workers, and field trips as well. Parent volunteers in the classroom. Lots of things that we're able to bring back now, getting back into the, I don't know what you want to call it, post-COVID times, but we're still in COVID times. Not quite sure how you want to say it. And then at Crescentwood, this is even smaller. What are you doing to me, Kristen? All right, so past and ongoing engagement opportunities. Obviously, a monthly newsletter to the families, class dojo, back to school barbecue, volunteers in the building, neonates, referrals to homeless liaison and parent advocate for resources, kindergarten orientation, upcoming engagement opportunities, coffee with the principal, parent engagement committee, parent chaperones, parent-teacher conferences, which we all have.
Our first copy
Oh,
of the
go ahead.
principal is actually tomorrow morning.
Oh,
So
tomorrow
they'll
morning.
come in and meet with me.
Tomorrow morning is the first coffee with the principal, so that should be fun. All right. Moving on to some literacy. I'm going to talk about literacy at the ELC, and then I'll hand it over to each of them to talk about their respective schools. At the Early Learning Center, we have some common assessment data that we collect on the children coming in and throughout the school year. We collect this data 4 times throughout the year. We assess them on upper and lowercase letter identification, and the end of the year expectation is that they recognize and can name as many as 10 letters. Sorry. Yes, I read that right. Recognize and name as many as 10 letters. And then letter sounds at the end of the year, they should be able to produce the correct sounds of up to 10 to 20 of those letters. And this is combined, upper and lowercase together. It's not separated. So that is something that one of our goals is the letter ID to help support the goals for the lower L buildings in their literacy goals moving forward.
All right, so both Forest Park and Crescentwood have similar literacy data and literacy goals. So right now we're in the middle of NWEA and MLPP testing. NWEA is our state assessment that we do, and MLPP digs a little bit further into reading skills. Currently, if you look at our NWEA data, it's pretty similar at both buildings. At Forest Park, 40% of the incoming kindergarten students are, at or above grade level in reading. So the kids coming in, 40% of them are at grade level in reading for this point in the year. 30% of first grade students are at grade level or above in reading at this point in the year. And 20% of second grade students are at grade level or above at this point in the year. At Crescentwood, 37% of our incoming kindergarten students are at or above grade level for this point in the year, 28% of first grade students, and 21% of second grade students. So we're currently utilizing
Hegarty for phonics, as well as Fountas and Pinnell. We're using Mesa for our reading instruction, and we recently purchased literacy footprints for guided reading. So those are what we're using for our group as a whole. And then Heather's going to talk a little bit further about some strategies that we're putting in place in order to increase this achievement data that you see before you.
Which one did I do? Okay, so as Kristen just said, we saw the scores, so now what do we do with them? So we have quite a few interventions that we can put in place in both of our buildings. Our literacy paraprofessionals, we both have a few literacy paraprofessionals that will work with small groups of children or one-on-one if needed. We use leveled literacy intervention, our LLI program, and that allows for each paraprofessional to pull 4 to 5 students at a time. They work with them for about 30 to 40 minutes each day. And we at Forest Park, I know I can speak for Forest Park, we have really seen some amazing results from our LLI program. Students are really moving. So we're really lucky to have that program. Reading recovery is also something that is used. It is used with first grade students. And that's Reading Recovery is a program that is provided by our reading specialists in our building. And that is also, they work with 4 first grade students for 9 weeks at a time. And again, with that program, with our reading specialists, we're seeing some great results as well. We also have a transitional kindergarten paraprofessional, and that they have a set schedule where they pull just our students that are considered transitional kindergarten, and those students are usually our 4-year-old students that come in at 4. They need a little bit more support to get them through. We have pretty good results with our transitional kindergarten. Last year we had about 50% of our students that were transitional kindergarten actually move to first grade rather than repeat the kindergarten. We also do small group reading with our interventions. All of our classroom teachers are going to literacy module training, so that's some extra support in small groups, centers that they can use, and more tier 2 support inside the classroom. We also have district professional development, and Kristen and I have planned this year to work together with our buildings, so they're going to receive the same professional development in reading strategies and tier 2 interventions that they can do in the classroom. We also have our instructional coaches that provide support to our classroom teachers, give them those extra strategies that they may need to work with their students. We have mentors that come in from Michigan State to each of our buildings. We have Deb Trapp. Oh, you have Deb Trapp too. Yep. We have Deb Trapp at all 3 of our buildings, and she's an amazing support for our teachers. And then we also have support through our MISD contacts as well. And let me just add on to that, it's not on there, but I was thinking about it on my drive over, I'm sorry. You know, when thinking about interventions, we always think about our curriculum, but we also have behavior support in the buildings this year, which are an amazing resource that we can tap into, because then that also goes back into the classroom as well. So we have behavior team, we have our at-risk social workers. I know I'm forgetting somebody. But I just wanted to add those in because they're really helpful with our interventions as well. And then we just had some pictures that we added from different events that we had at the beginning of the year for our back to school events. And it's not, oh, there we go. I had to figure out what that student was biting into. And then, yeah, I was like, I don't know what he's biting into. And I think that is it. So if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them.
I have a couple.
Well, sure.
Nothing really major. Let me get my glasses on because I put down notes, but I can't read them. One was when you said that, like, for instance, 40% of students are reading at grade level right now. Mm-hmm. That's like an an initial assessment, I guess you could say, at the beginning of the year. So that means there's already 40% that are reading at grade level. Our objective is to get the other 60% reading at grade level by the end of the year.
So it's not at grade level for the end of the year, it's for this time in the year. So kids.
So we still got to catch them up to here
Yes.
and then move them forward as well, too.
Yes,
So the assessment is, I guess you could say, time sensitive, I guess, so it is right now where they're at right now.
yeah.
Yes.
So we expect all of our students to be higher than what this assessment is right now at the end of the year.
Yes.
And the other one is ECSE, I think is what it was.
Yes. That's
Can you just describe what that kind of looks like a little bit?
Oh, sure.
You know, because I know it's parental engagement and they're coming in, because I think some of us, we were at a conference not too long ago and we saw a program similar to that, but I don't think it was necessarily special education. It sounds like when you just touched on it, that it might be someone like that. And I'm
So-
just kind of curious.
Yeah, ECSE is early childhood special education. It's the program you have to qualify to, with an IEP in order to get into the program. And then the family events that we are hosting are to help support the parents at home with their child so they can learn different strategies and things to do at home with their child to help the process in the classroom as well. So, for example, this first event that we had was about the core vocabulary that's used in the classroom. And a lot of pictures are used because there's a lot of nonverbal students. So those pictures have words on them, but the teachers and staff made core vocabulary words for the families to be able to take home and put on their fridge, like want. So if a child wants something to drink, they can put, the picture on the fridge and point to want. If they're not speaking the word, they can point to want so that the parent knows, well, this is what I'm trying to tell you, this is what I'm wanting. And then they have other words that they can put on there as well that are not considered core vocabulary, with pictures of like milk or juice or, something like that, so they can point to want juice. And then the parent knows, oh, well, you want juice. We're gonna open up the fridge. And then they actually were taught how to reiterate that back to the students at home as well, so that they're getting it in both places, at home and at school.
Sounds kind of like the similar program, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's what we were.
Yeah.
Because it was similar to what we had seen before about how the students actually was getting the parents basically on the same page with you guys as far as what's going on in the school.
Yep.
So that they can reinforce that at home as well, too.
Yes, and
that's
then,
basically what it is.
yep, and the rest of the nine events, I think that's what it is. There's a different topic every month that we host an
Now,
event.
do they actually come in the building for that?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yep, they
So they're
did.
right in the classroom?
Well, we didn't go in the classroom, we were in the training room. But yes, they came in, and if they need to bring their children, they can. And then our paraprofessionals in the building help assist and stay with the children so that the parents can be with the teachers and really get something out of the education, because if the kids are there, that's all out the window. You can't hear what's going on with the distractions.
And then I have one last one, and this one, I want to make sure you understand, you're not judged on parental involvement, but I'm just kind of interested. There was a piece up there as far as solicitation of parents to be
Oh.
involved. I was just wondering, how is that going, and what is the response like on that? I mean, is it falling short of where you would like it to be?
Yes, it is, and I have, sorry.
Oh, I can hear her. Yeah.
I'm
She's doing
loud,
great.
but, so I have been asking regularly on Dojo. We posted signs in the building. My teachers put it on Class Dojo. It's been in our newsletter. We have had some parents who have volunteered with arrival and dismissal to help us. We're still trying to get more, and then almost daily, we're handing out application information for our neonates so that they can come in and help us with lunches. Because we're really trying to get more parents in the building and build more of a partnership with them.
And what do you think is if you just had to guess, what is the major reason why some are apprehensive or can't or whatever?
I think for the arrival and dismissal, it's a volunteer thing, so it's not paid. And for the neonates, I think it's the application process that is deterring them.
I would agree with that.
So they've contacted food service that they're interested, but then they don't follow through making the application. So food service is trying to contact all of my parents who have reached out to try to get them to apply as well.
And then in the buildings, I guess this is kind of a side thing, but it's along those lines. PTA, PTOs, Yes, no?
We're working on it. We,
I mean, is there a lot or no?
There
Not really.
hasn't been one at Forest Park since I started. We always try every year, but we just don't get the response that we would like.
so on our back-to-school survey and our back-to-school event RSVP, we asked if parents would be interested in serving. And anyone who said yes, it asked for their name and contact information. So we've been following up with them to try to get a committee going, even if it's small to start, until we can kind of lay the foundation of it and get it larger. So we're hopeful of that, because I know my building hasn't had one in a number of years.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one. Is the dojo like the dashboard? Explain that for me. What is the dojo?
A messaging program, so the parents can join on it and we can message back and forth, and they can also receive photos, and we can send documents to them through it as well.
Okay. I just didn't.
I have a question, comment, it said there was 90%, contact, at the beginning of, it was one of the first slides, it was 90% contact with the parents. So the 8%, is there another way you can contact them besides like the dojo system or email, text message or something?
Oh, for sure,
To get in
yes.
touch with them.
We utilize email a lot, phone calls all the time if needed. We still try to get those families connected to dojo. 8% is not a lot
Right.
in the building, but we are consistently and continuously sending those invites to them so that they can connect. It's really up to the parent to put that app on their
Yeah.
phone and sign up for it.
Yeah.
And you honestly don't even really need the app. You can just, if you have a computer or a device you can log into, it's just more easily accessible via phone. But yeah, I mean, our parents at the ELC are really good with communicating. I don't know, I can't speak for the other two buildings, but they're really good at communicating. I don't know if it's because we're on them a lot about like, hey, let's make sure that we're getting signed up so that we can, have this communication tool to, serve each of us better. I'm not sure why our parents are really good at signing up, but they just are.
Hey, they care about the little people. That's why I'm like 92%
Right.
is really good.
Yes.
That is really, really good because,
Well,
it's-
And in all honesty, one classroom was at 40%. So that one classroom was bringing the whole thing down. So I got to get on that classroom.
Yes.
Get those parents to sign up.
I have a question regarding the literacy rates. Have you attempted to determine whether what you're seeing in the classroom is an indicator of the literacy rate of the adults at home?
So no, that's not something we've tapped into, but that is very interesting.
Well, the reason I was thinking it because a lot of times parents won't necessarily say that they don't read well or don't do math well. And so I was wondering if anyone had thought about
Yeah.
an attempt to determine that. Because it's usually indicative, what you see in the
Yeah.
classroom of what's going on at home.
So
Or
we
even
actually-
asking kids how many books they have at home.
Right.
All of that's important.
We discussed that at our back-to-school professional learning. When I was in the classroom, I always asked my parents to write a letter about their student to introduce them to me. So I told my teachers about that and told them that it was a good way to get to know their parents and also to see their literacy level because you can see how they write the letter back. So some have done it, but not all have done it. So it's interesting to see and also to hear about the kids too.
And that's a good strategy.
That's a great question.
I think the other part to summarize though is parents and community members, that we need everybody reading to children and getting more books in the hands of children. And if you have young children at home, talking to your children and using vocabulary to help your students understand better. But together with a partnership with families and with literacy, we can see the academic gains. So I applaud the pre-K2 buildings for embracing the families and trying to help to educate. I think the ECSC's educational opportunities for families are something that all of our schools can continue to grow into. It's a big push for us as an organization because schools cannot raise children alone. It takes all of us. And our parents, I think, need a bit more support than now more than ever before. So thank you very much. ELC, Forest Park and Crestwood, you can leave the clicker there because Jeff will get to use it next. Thanks so much. So to continue on with the superintendent's report, again, I'd like to thank the 3 building principals. If you haven't been out and about recently, the canopy progress on the entrances of our schools, letters are going up, lights are going up. I think there was only one S that was upside down and backwards, and that S has been corrected. But you can see that the front entrances of our schools, the branding is there, and it is looking welcoming and inviting. Last week, we had the privilege and honor of celebrating our 3 Teachers of the Year, as well as accepting a award on behalf of the district for the work in the investment in our property. So congratulations to our award recipients again. We did have a homecoming game Friday evening, as well as a dance on Saturday night. I know the students all enjoyed their homecoming festivities. It was a pink out, if you can't tell from the pink socks and pink paraphernalia, there was pink everywhere. Boys and Girls Club partnership, we did recently hand over the keys to the Eastpointe Alternative Center to the Boys and Girls Club. Sean Dorsey, the new CEO of Southeastern Michigan, has also been participating in the school district's strategic planning session. The construction interior work will begin with an optimistic open 2023 winter of the Boys and Girls Club here in our community. Coming up, we've got varsity volleyball at Madison, EMS volleyball at Clintondale, varsity volleyball at Fitzgerald, Shamrock football up at Port Huron Northern on Friday. It is the end of the first quarter on October 28th. We do have a half day for students on October 31st and no school for students on November 1st. That is a professional learning day. That concludes the superintendent's report, and we thank you again, principals, for your contributions this evening.
Okay, next we have first hearing of the public. We'll open that up at 6:59. Does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close this. Next we have discussion, action, business office, we have the bond proposal.
First of all, thank you for letting me present.
Oh, I was going to introduce.
I'll let you take that then.
All right, so fortunately, Robert Carlesso could not be here to introduce, but this is Jeff Atkins of Barton Mallow, and he will be presenting for us this evening with the clicker there.
Yes.
Information on a prospective bond proposal. Jeff?
Thank you so much. So a little more about just myself, a little quick introduction. I've been with Barton Mallow for about 25 years now. Everything I've done has been in the K-12 market. I actually did work on your bond back in 2009, so do have a familiarity with some of your buildings. It's always interesting to come back and see how they've changed over the time. And all my work has been in K-12. I spent a lot of time doing construction out in the field, but the last 10 years have been solely focused on helping school districts like yourself plan and pass bond issue programs. I think if you click the little slideshow thing at the very bottom, it'll. Yeah, there you go. Great. All right, so introductions. Just in case you need to contact me, I got my contact information up there. And it looks like I'm all, that's backwards. That's forward. So the agenda, I've got a long agenda here, but my goal is not to dive very deeply into a lot of these things. I just want to give you a very high level of what we've got going on. I had the chance to meet with Mr. Weissap and Mr. Colesso to talk about where you're at with your district, where you're at with your sinking fund, and kind of get to re-engage myself in the process. And my goal tonight is not to sell you on the need to have a bond program. That's not my goal. My goal here is just give you information to understand what a bond program is, what the ins and outs are, what the time frame is, what the financial implications are of a bond program. Try to give you as much information as possible so that when you're ready to take the next step on going for a bond program, you're better prepared, better engaged in that, and we'll be happy to come back and talk to you a little more about that. So as far as an overview, I just want to kind of go back, give you a little history. So as I mentioned, I was involved in the 2009 program, and that program was a $23 million program. Did renovations at all of your school buildings. Also, just recently, you did pass your sinking fund, which generates about $1.5 million a year. And those sinking fund dollars are, for the most part, being utilized to take care of stuff like your roofs, boilers, and parking lots, things that are your facility needs to keep the doors open and to repair those things that have a useful life that usually ends around 20 years. After that, there were some COVID and ESSER funds that have helped the districts really weather the storm through the pandemic, but also have given the districts, a lot of districts, an advantage of trying to do things that they couldn't do before, because it allowed districts to, whether it's providing devices for the students that they didn't have before so they could do remote learning, but it definitely has helped school districts and put stuff there. So you've done a couple projects with your ESSER funds, like some flooring and restrooms, and then the sinking fund has really started to kick in. Those exterior canopy pictures that you saw were funded through your sinking fund. And then what's planned for the next 2 years is to do some interior work at your elementary schools, and then also start taking care of some mechanical equipment at some of the other buildings in 2024. So that's kind of just where you're at and really starting to look at what's going on in the near future. So the planning path, when we talk to districts about going for a bond program, they often ask, how long is it going to take? How much time do I need to get to where I want to be in order to engage the voters at some point? We typically tell school districts it's about 1 year. 1 year is a very good round number to look at. If it's anything longer than a year, people start to lose interest in it. They really think that they've been through this once before. Parents come and go throughout the system. So we try to stick with that 1 year because that's when parents are most involved and teachers are most involved looking at it. They haven't disengaged because they've gone through the summer. Anything less than a year starts to get a little bit compressed. You start to have to kind of shortchange some things, really start to compact and stack some different decision processing on there. So 1 year is a very good window for that. Right now, there are 3 times a year you can go for an election. That's May, August, and November. Those are the 3 typical ones. Every time there's a presidential election, they do have a March election in there also. So there's 4 times to go if you went into 2024. So data gathering is the first step. And you've done a lot of that already. You engaged Partners in Architecture back in 2020. They went through and did a very thorough facility assessment of all your buildings, looked at your roofs, boilers, and parking lots, and graded them, and put a dollar value to what it would take to replace those. So you've done a lot of that already. And again, that's taking care of your site, your roof, your building exterior, your interior, your mechanical, plumbing, and electrical systems. On top of that, when going for a bond issue, we want to take a little deeper dive and look at some of your technology, safety and security enhancements, and then furniture and equipment. Those are things that were not included in the partners assessment, but things that are usually included within a bond program. So there's a little more data gathering to still happen in the upfront part of the process. So just to remind you a little bit of what that report might have looked like, being it's almost more than 2 years ago now that they developed that. If you remember, you may have gotten a copy of it or you may have seen it. It was a giant 3-ring binder with a lot of data in there as far as what was done. And when they went through there, they did prioritize things for you. So the bottom there, you'll see the priority 1, things that are going to critical needs within the first 3 years of almost $19 million. Those are some of the first projects that have been going out of the gate. But they also identified some priority 2 and priority 3 projects that add another $20 million in priority 2 and about another $14 million in priority 3. So those are needs that are out there. They're things that there's still a little bit of life left in there. There might be a roof that's got 15 years of wear and tear on it. So we know it's going to expire sometime in the next 5 years and start to leak. So those are things that they want to identify for you to make sure that they're on your radar as you start to look and plan for future projects. But as you can see, those are some substantial dollars out there of just things to keep your building safe, warm, and dry. And I just grabbed one snapshot. I know you can't read it, but Partners did a real nice job of assessing things and really coming up with a spreadsheet that helps us kind of guide us into where the next steps are. And I know this is what Mr. Weishaupt's used to start to look at the mechanical priorities as the next major goal of the project. So when we talk about life cycle, when we look at stuff, we don't want to look at stuff that's already gone to failure, because at that point we've missed it, and by the time we design it, bid it, do the work, those leaks may be going on, those boilers may be failing. So we know that a lot of the items in construction have have a pretty regular life of about 20 years. Typically, you can extend that life, maybe another 5 to 10 years if with good maintenance and repairs on that. But at some point, you can't find those parts. It's very, very difficult to find parts for your mechanical equipment these days. As you can probably imagine, the supply chain has made it very, very difficult. I talk to a lot of facility guys that are using eBay to find parts right now. There's a great market for that, but that's not a great solution for that. So that's why school districts typically go for bond programs every 5 to 10 years, because they don't want to let everything go to failure and then try to fix it all at once. They like to try to have this a rolling repairs of doing everything maybe every 5 to 10 years, so not everything goes bad all at once. So building utilization is something that we also look at typically during a bond program. So right now, I'm pretty familiar with your school district, but what we'd want to do is look at and make sure that as part of the facility assessment, we wouldn't be investing dollars into spaces that aren't highly used. We know there's some capacity at the high school right now, so we'd want to look at that, dive a little deeper to understand how much money do we want to invest in spaces that aren't highly used. And also just look at the rest of your buildings, how much they're used. I think with having 4 elementary schools, you got a pretty good balance. It's very good geographically how you have it set out. But I think the high school will be something we'd want to dig into a little deeper. It's one of your oldest buildings in the district. I believe it's the oldest building in the district. And it's definitely over capacity for what your student enrollment is today. So we'd want to look at that, not necessarily tell you to close it, tear down things, but maybe there's some opportunities to reinvest in that and create some programs you don't currently have. So there might be some opportunity space within that high school. So the programming phase, this is where the fun really starts. I mean, this is kind of that, kind of like the honeymoon phase of things. You really start to dream, imagine. So these are things above and beyond just doing one-for-one replacements. You know, your sinking fund is very good for doing the one-for-one replacements, but this is where you can start to think about, where do I want to reimagine the district? What don't we have that we really want to have for our students? What spaces have really been left behind? Obviously, you know what your neighbors do, you know what they have, so this is your chance to do things above and beyond, create enhancements or improvements to your buildings. So some of the things that we look at is your presentation spaces. I know right now you're in the process of updating media centers, so these would be spaces outside your media center. These are spaces that you can bring small groups of students to, so they're not sitting in the hallway trying to do their homework or trying to take a test. It's a great spot for professional development. This is where your staff can come to collaborate and bring things together. So these are very popular, different kind of spaces. A lot of times we try to find ways to carve these spaces out of the building. We don't want to put additions on them necessarily, but this is where part of that utilization study may come in and say, you know, we've got an underutilized classroom here. What could we do with it? Could we really envision this to do something that's more useful for that building? STEM and maker spaces, these are very popular programs in many school districts. So this really would start at your elementary school level, bringing the STEM programs in there, of how that can be done. And every building I've been to, they do things differently. Some are very heavy focus on science, some are very heavily focused on a robotics program. Everything's a little bit different, but these are programs that, you know, students are learning how to use more hands-on skills instead of just the standard book work. Nothing against book work. But what that usually leads to is, where does that bring them to the high school where you have CTE programs? So this is where I mentioned that, you know, there may be a program up there or one that's not listed up there that you really would like to have for your students here at Eastpointe that you don't have right now. So we're looking at the high school, what space you might have available, what programs are out there. A lot of times this is maybe a partnership with somebody in the community that's got a strong tie to a certain trade or something that you want to bring in here, bring them in as some consultants for you. So this is really looking at what they could be. No district can do every single one of these. They're just very cost prohibitive to do all these. So a lot of times what districts do is they look at what the surrounding districts are doing and look for that void. Where is that missing component that we can bring some students over and maybe help work collaboratively with other schools in Macomb County of a program that they don't have or they are not very strong in. Athletics always winds up becoming part of a bond program. It's just a level of what athletics are being done there. Sometimes it's the actual facility that needs to be updated. Sometimes it's more of the fields that want to be updated. I know you have a situation with a football field of, you know, what is your home field here in the community? I don't have an answer for that, but I'd love to continue that discussion with you to understand what that could be for the district long term. But there's different ways to do it. The picture on the bottom left there is one of my favorite ones. It's basically a projection system inside the gymnasium. I know students aren't supposed to play dodgeball anymore, but it's a way for those kids to do an athletic event where they're throwing the ball at one of those targets. Typically it's a math problem, you know, to throw the ball at, 2 + 2 = what? And they got to throw the ball at the number 4 square. So it's a way for the students to still have some academics and athletics smeared together at that level. I worked with Carrie doing this over at Warren Con. It was very well received by all the students in those spaces. They really enjoyed playing those games. And then the arts. This kind of goes, this is the yin and yang to the athletics, is, what do your art spaces want on there? We never want to forget those folks. Those are usually very supportive folks within the community. Is what do you need to do? What do your art spaces look like? This could be your typical art, your music, choir, whatever those spaces might be. There's opportunities to invest in those spaces and improve those spaces. And then technology. I understand right now you're in very good shape with your instructional technology for your students, but we do know that computers have end of life. They're good for about 5 years before they really start to have a lot of problems. A lot of school districts, they plan the bond out to be sold in 2 series, so that second series is a smaller bond program that just buys devices for those students. It just helps you make it a very sustainable program, so you're buying those devices later. It really lets you, you really can't rely on those be another influx of funds through COVID or ESSER dollars 5 years from now. This would give you that opportunity to buy those funds later on to refresh those devices. And safety security, this is always something that's very important, very high level. Fortunately, here in Michigan with Oxford, it's even more heightened awareness on this, but there's different safety and security. All the time they're figuring out what the best practices are, and it just keeps evolving as things are changed. But safety and security be something to look at. It's not just security cameras and access control. It's other devices, it's other ways to slow down intruders, it's other way to identify those intruders early on. And furniture and equipment, this is something that really touches students very directly, obviously, that, the different way to put students in the classrooms. Mobile furniture is great, putting stuff on wheels, those students can move around. They can get into a collaborative mode where they're huddled in small groups. In a bigger group, they can go back into the more traditional lines and rows. But having stuff on wheels is just a huge advantage. The bigger picture up there is an elementary school, and if you look at it, there's about 4 different seating styles in there. And I've seen it done very successfully in some classrooms where, based on the students, how they move, how they work, and based on reward system, how they behave, they have different areas they're allowed to sit within the classroom. So that's kind of just some of the big dreaming things, just kind of things to think about as you look at bond programs and what else could be added into it. Now I want to talk a little bit about the financial part of the process. So typically school districts use about 3 main reasons of how they improve their facilities. One's a bond program, that's pretty typical. I would say the vast majority use a bond program. A sinking fund is also very commonly used, but the sinking fund is more of your roofs, boilers, and parking lots approach. And then other would be your COVID ESSER dollars or grant dollars. Those are things that you've used over time. The best way to describe the difference between a bond and a sinking fund is you think about a bond, it's very much like a house mortgage. So when you went to buy a house, you took out a mortgage to buy it all at once, and then you pay it back over time. The sinking fund, I would consider it's more like your utilities that you do for the house. That's more of it just as a pay-as-you-go with your paycheck, just to kind of keep things going, keep the heat on, and keep the electricity on in your house. So that's a big difference on the financial implications. For bonds, there are 2 different types of bonds. There's a qualified bond and an unqualified. The qualified bond just means that you're using the state of Michigan's credit rating to sell those bonds. And the state of Michigan has the top credit rating, so when you go to sell those bonds, it's financially to your advantage to do that. They just have a few more strings attached when you go through that process. In 2009, when you went through the bond program, you did go through the state of Michigan Treasury Department, so that would be my recommendation. We'd go to the same route again. That was very successful. So where does Eastpointe sit right now in the county as a measurable? So Eastpointe, I got it highlighted or underlined there in red. So the blue bar is your bonding debt that you have, and the yellow bar is your sinking fund mills that you have. So you can see that Eastpointe is kind of 50-50 in the county, which is a little unique of what they have in bonding, what they have in sinking funds. But you can see total overall, they're kind of sitting just a little below the median average of a little over 7 mills. About 8 mills is where everybody else is at on the average. So so if somebody in the community asks you, if you did go for a bond issue, they say, don't you make enough money? Don't you have enough money? You can kind of show them this chart and say, we're really at the average level of where we're at, or in some cases a little bit below the average of what the rest of the county is. But this kind of just gives you a little bit of a measurable to let you know where you're at. So we often get asked, as far as going for a bond program, what's the success rate? What's our chances? So statewide, over the last 10 years, the passage rate has been about 70%. 70%. My eyes weren't that good. But when you start to break that down a little bit more, when you go for an increase, that passage rate drops to about 57%. So a pretty substantial decrease if you ask for an increase of the voters. If you go with a no tax rate increase, just ask them to just continue to pay what they're currently paying, that success rate goes up to a 91%. So there's a big difference in that. I'm not saying one's better than the other. If you decide that you have a great program, you're very confident, very proud of the program you're going to bring to the voters, asking for an increase is not a bad thing. We typically tend to blow that passage rate away. We've got a pretty good campaign system. So we would have no problem supporting you if you decide to ask for an increase. But we just want you to be aware of what the difference is, because there is difference. If you like statistics, this tells you a lot. As far as the 3 voting times, whether it's May, August, or November, they're relatively equal. May is a little bit more successful. November's pretty good. August is a little tougher just because, your parents aren't engaged in the summer. So you're trying to go for a campaign while everybody's off for the summer. So it's a little tougher to do the engagement. But with absentee votes being so prevalent these days, the August percentages have started to come up a little bit to be almost as successful as the other ones out there. So just a little bit of numbers for what Eastpointe could go for. So we had PFM, who is your financial advisor, run some numbers for you. So the first one up there, if you went for a no tax rate increase, just maintain the level, the tax rate, you could generate $20 million to go to the voters for a no millage increase. If you were to ask them for a 1 mil increase, it would go up to about $33 million. If you ask for a 2 mil increase, it goes up to $48 million. So you can kind of see where that really starts to increase and really starts to generate more funds. And the question we always get is, what does that mean to the taxpayer? So depending on your house value, it's all based on the value of your house, and it's the taxable value of your house. So it's usually about half the market value of your house is what it is. So a no mill increase obviously is a no increase to them. If it was a 1 mil increase to generate $33 million, if your average house was $120,000, $150,000, the taxable value being half that, it'd be about $60 a year or $75 a year in that range. So I'm not going to say it's nothing, because it's not my money. I don't want to ever tell people that their money doesn't mean something, but it's very minimal impact to them financially if you think about that. And even if you went to the 2 mil increase, it's between $120 to $150. So 50 cents a day at most is what that works out to. We tend to try to break that down for them, and what does it mean for you per day on that? And people understand it's pretty minimal to provide a major improvement to your community. And this chart helps them kind of, depending on where their house value is, it lets them understand that. So time frame. So if you decided that you do want to go for a bond program, you still could go May of 23, but that would mean we'd have to be in Treasury in December. So that's probably a little too aggressive to do that. The next opportunity is in August. August would mean that we would go to Treasury in March. So that gives us between now and March to really digest the program, prioritize it, and really spend some time looking into it. So then you would go back here, the call for election would be in April, and the informational campaign would kick into gear between April and August, which would allow you some time to design it and allow some work still to be done next year. In theory, I think really what would happen is you would generate a lot of your design work through the sinking fund, and this would help fund some of those projects that were outside the sinking fund. If you decide to go to November of 23, just pushes the timeline back a little bit. The only thing with a November election is it doesn't allow you time to design and build and bid the work and get the material in time to do work that following year. So really, if you went to November, you wouldn't be seeing any of those improvements until 2025. So sometimes people get a little frustrated that they've passed something and it's not off the shelf, but as you can imagine these days with supply chain, just nothing is easily available, easy to get. So it does push you back a little bit further as far as the implementation side of that. So whatever you do decide, we'll help you with basically a week-by-week calendar. We find that's very effective to just keep everybody on task and break it into small chunks and understand what you need to do week by week in order to make sure you hit your deadlines. And then just a little information on the informational campaign. This is very important to the process, is how do we communicate this to the voters? The district can't use district funds to do a yes campaign. That's not allowed. The only thing the district can do is an informational campaign, provide them with factual information of what the bond program is for and help to inform them on their vote. But typically we've found a lot of very effective means to do it. Social media has grown more and more versus, print media and things in the buildings. But some of those things in the building are still very effective in order for people to understand it that may not be watching their emails or watching what's coming in their Facebook posts. So there's a lot of different methods. We would work with you on it as far as whatever the most effective method is for you, kind of piggyback on whatever you currently are using. Just a couple samples of some of your neighboring districts. Roseville went a couple years ago for their bond program. Lake Shore just recently passed theirs. So we just had different kind of marketing materials we put out there for people to understand what was in there. Very high level. You want to keep it very simple because people's attention span are very short. In addition to this, though, we do create a very, very detailed frequently asked question document that goes on the website. So as a question comes up, it's a very easy crutch to use to say, here's all the information that you really want if you really want to dive into it deeper. But at a high level, here's the information too. So we try to communicate as much as possible. So hopefully it's been it's a lot of information to try to throw at you. Really, what the next steps are for for Eastpointe is, it's kind of what do you want to do, when do you want to do it, and how much do you want to spend. So, there's a couple different price points, and you don't have to pick any one of those. You could say, what does 1.5 mils do? Because we think we want to spend about, $40 million. We can run different scenarios on those financials. It doesn't have to be a fixed number. A lot of times we say, let the program dictate what it is, and then figure out what that number is afterwards. So you're really asking for what you really need. And really, when do you want to go? When are you going to be ready to approach those voters? I know we've kind of looked at what the city or what other municipalities have going on. A lot of times it's nice to piggyback on their elections because it defers some of the costs on that. So looking into next year, what else might be on the ballot in '23 would be helpful to understand when you may want to go with them at the same time. So those are kind of some things to look at as far as when you want to go and how much you want to go for. So with that, I've done a lot of talking, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have, or have some more discussion on those things. Okay.
Well, you have your needs list, and then I'll call it, you have your wish list, things that you'd like to have done. In the past, I know we've dealt with each other before,
Yeah.
so I know you've been around for a while. In the past, how much is the actual parents and the students involved in the development of either of those lists?
I would say the needs list is probably less so. Typically we know the boiler needs to be done, and it'd be hard to explain. It probably would be the best use of time to explain to a parent.
That's what I anticipated you would say the needs
So,
list.
so there's, and we just call it the foundation. We try to say, okay, this is what the foundation is. Let's just set that aside. That's what it is. Now let's look at the wants of what they are. And at that point, I think you bring in different groups. I mean, we talked about different kind of, we want to bring in a group of athletics. What would represent them well? A group of the arts, who would represent them well to understand it? The principals would be involved, what are their buildings? Because I can walk through a building and look at it and say that carpet's bad, but what I don't understand is, during your Christmas concert, what's going on there, or during your lunch period if I'm not there, or during your parking lot. So that's really where we want to engage them to understand what they're thinking.
Well, see, because my concern, well, I don't know if it's a concern, but my thought on this is that all the educators, as well as us board members here, we can probably tell you several things that we'd love to see in our district that we don't have now.
Mhm.
But ultimately, it's really the parents and the students we serve.
Yeah.
So to me, and also, it's members of our community that actually are the voters for this. So I'm just thinking that the more participation we can have from them early in the process, the more buy-in we'd probably be able to get out of them. So, you know what I mean? Because let's just say, I'll just do an off-the-wall crazy one. Let's say, for instance, 90% of the people out there, and we did a poll, and 90% of the people wanted to install a restaurant at every elementary building so that they could get food there, in the evening instead of having to go to a fast food place or whatever. Well, if that's something they wanted and they really supported it heavily, it's something we should take into consideration, right? I mean, you understand what I'm saying? I'm just thinking we serve the people and we're trying to get buy-in from parents.
Right,
We're
right.
trying to get them involved in our district. And when we're going to be spending their money, I think they should be involved in some of the decisions as to what we're going to be spending that money on. And of course, the needs, they're not in the buildings, on a regular basis like the staff is and the students are, so they know. And as well as the students, because sometimes you'd be surprised what the students are saying. Hey, we'd really like to have this, you guys you keep overlooking that, we'd really like to have that, And sometimes it's just that simple, and then sometimes it could be something that's not as expensive as you thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, and you're right, that's absolutely, we find that it's the sound system quality of the stage. It's something simple like that that means everything to them, but it's a $15,000 item in a scheme of things, you're right. So what we found is these focus panels, that's one of the things during the campaign phase, we found those to be extremely effective. So really what they are is,
But do you already have your list made up by then, once you're into the campaign phase?
I would say.
See, that's what my concern is it something where they can be involved earlier? Is it something where maybe they should take tours of various buildings where they've had recent bonds, maybe see pictures of recent bonds, things like that, to see what has been out there, what's going on out there, so that they could say, hey, because that might be the same person who's gonna really help us to pass it,
Yes.
right?
And then that's the
I
goal.
mean, if we have some things on there that the parents want, I would assume that those parents would be out there championing the bond issue as well.
Yeah, and that's the goal of focus panels, is to do that. And the focus panels is to, we would set up, it's usually like 10 groups, so it's a group of elementary principals, group of secondary principals, group of elementary parents, group of secondary. It's a group of, city officials. So there's a pretty good way to get a nice cross-section. It's all about demographics and surveys, but you do 10 of those focus panels, you ask them all the same questions, you sit them down face to face, they get a little introduction from the superintendent, hey, here's what we're thinking, we're gonna do this, and then then the superintendent leaves the room, so they're very free and open to talk about what they have. They don't feel like they're guarded, they don't wanna say something to offend somebody's feelings. But then they go through a series of, hey, here's what we're thinking, here's these things, and the term they use is help us strengthen our thinking. What have we forgotten, what are we missing, what do you like, what don't you like? It's a very detailed process, but it happens over just a 2-day period. You do like 3 or 4 a day, some in the morning, some in the afternoon. And it's so much more effective than trying to go, asking the superintendent to go, to every single Rotary Club, PTO, senior citizen. I mean, you go to those things, you get very little feedback, or the feedback you get are very positive people. This is a much more effective way to do it. And we've just started using this over like the past 4 or 5 years. And it's been very effective because of COVID. People love remote learning. They love to be able to do this thing on remote. We've gotten a lot more engagement, a lot more feedback than we ever did back in the days of just doing the road show and the town halls type thing. So that would be the way to get that more feedback from them. And I'd be happy to talk to you a little more, show you some of those
Well,
reports.
yeah, the only reason that I kind of wanted to discuss this a bit is because since I've been on the board anyhow, we've passed the sinking fund and we've passed the bond. And both of those were used mainly just to meet our needs, because we've been in a position where we've had so many needs that we're using that just to meet the needs and try to take care of some of the needs that we have.
Right.
But this now looks like we may be in a position where if we go out to the public to ask them for additional finances in order to improve our buildings, we may be able to start to get some of the wants. Some of the things that we want above and beyond just the needs. And that's my hope anyhow. And I think that now that we're in a position we can do that, I think we need to get them more involved.
John, I have one question. I think it'll be a dual question for you and the speaker here. Would you increase more bodies from the strategic program that we're working on already? When you add more community or parents to that committee?
So what Mr. Roscoe is asking is that we're in the throes of strategic planning right now, and can't a lot of the ideas about the future and the pathways for building be generated through the strategic planning process as well?
Okay. Yeah, those two tend to parallel each other quite a bit. I mean, usually this is one part of that strategic plan. Obviously, you got a lot more you need to tackle than just the facilities. But yeah, I would think that you probably know the people that would be most effective to involve in those things, and the principals know which parents would be most effective to bring on board those. So I would see a lot of parallels there, but you wouldn't want to ask those parents too much. I mean, that's a lot. If they're both doing both those things, it's a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We
right.
appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you very much for letting me present.
Presentation.
It's always fun to come back here. Do I need to, I'm just going to return this.
Okay, next we'll open up the second hearing of the public at 7:31. Does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close it. Trustees now,
I'm first, panel. I'm first. Congratulations to the new hires. Great job, our 3 principals today. just to see the kids and the parents interacting with each other, and it seemed like there's a lot of growth from your educational piece there. And just keep doing the good work that you're doing, and we're behind you 100%. Thank you to the community for giving us an opportunity, or giving myself an opportunity to serve you. And just be careful out there, children, as you go trick-or-treating and getting ready for the fall. Thanks. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations to all the new hires. Thank you for the presentation by the principals. That was a great job. It's always good to hear what's going on in our schools. And it's good to hear that the parents and the teacher, you're collaborating and getting involved to figure out how best to serve the students. So that's always a good thing. I'm glad to see the Boys and Girls Club finally getting into getting the ball rolling real good. And thank you for the work you've done on your staff, superintendent, and thank you for all the things that you do. You work hard to keep the school district going. And thank you to the community for allowing me to serve you as a trustee. And that's it.
Thank you. Couple of things I wanted to comment on with Ms. Crawford. I love the idea of having parents write back to you. I've used the strategy myself with Wayne County Community College, because one of the things I discovered, instead of asking outright what someone knows or what they don't know, having them to write a response to something is really a good pre-testing measure to see where we start to do instruction. And I don't know if we have opportunity for an adult literacy enhancement program, but I think it might be beneficial if somehow it could be done, because the more parents are involved and the more they understand what their student is learning, the more involved they get. And of course, the student will be performing at a higher level. At least that's been my experience. So I think that's all really good. And it was brought to my attention not too long ago that the new hires are not, their hiring is contingent upon board approval. So even though it would have appeared that I've been saying no to some new hires, I actually was not saying no, because prior to that revelation, it appeared that they were already working and didn't need our approval. So I would really like to see something in the agenda that states that contingent upon board approval. Because if they're already working, I'm assuming if they're working, it's been approved, and not so much of our needing an approval, but acceptance of what has been done, just like the expense report. And let's see. We saw some of the teachers the other night who were awarded, and I did get a message from a community person who was upset that I apparently was the only one who responded. They said they sent a message to everyone. I would hope that even if we don't know the answer to questions, we can at least find out how to direct people so they won't feel like they're being ignored. I know how I would feel if someone ignored a question. And so I'd hope that we would be able to at least figure out where to direct them. Not that we have to know the answer. That's not what I'm saying at all. But we should at least know how to direct people to where they can get the answer they're seeking. And I think just want parents to know I'm doing my best to uphold my oath of office. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Thank you.
I really want to say that I'm glad that you brought out, I'm sorry, I don't remember what your name is, but you said that they have extra support at the schools that wasn't on the slides. The principal from, yes. Principal Guerreras, I'm sorry. I'm so bad with names. The support that we need for our students goes so far. It's so different than what, even when I was a child, the things that they need now is so much. The social, emotional, physical, everything is so much. And so it's really wonderful to see that you're providing the extra support the students need. Because just like Ms. Rayford said, some parents may not know how that their kids need to read this book because they can't read it themselves. And so I totally agree with you that we might need to look into a program that might have adult literacy. And I mean, people are ashamed that they cannot read. So it needs to be something that they can reach out to that not necessarily we know, or maybe we can guide them to get some help, because it can be embarrassing when you cannot read. You can't get me to do math at all because that's not my strong suit. But sometimes those people is willing to say I can't do it. I'm okay with saying I can't do math because I know that's a weak point for me. But everybody is not like that. So I would hope that we would be able to provide that extra support some kind of way. I don't know how it would be done, but I'm sure we may be able to say, okay, there's adult literacy classes that like have GED testing. Can we refer them to those places and have that somewhere on our website or something? You see what I'm saying? That type of thing. I really appreciate that y'all take the time and come out and do these presentations for us so we know a better picture of what's going on, because we only know by what you tell us. I really hope that you can get some parent engagement. That is really hard because lives are affected in all different kinds of ways, trying to get the parents who work at night to come in the morning at night, that kind of thing. So I would still hope that you can get some parent involvement. Keep trying. That's all I can say. Please don't stop trying. It's hard, but please don't stop trying. We need all of our parents to be engaged as much as they can. You know, the little thing will be big to their child. If I see my mother walk in the door, one day I can be like, my mama came up here, you know. So please don't stop trying. And if there's anything that we can do, please let us know. And I think I have the sentiments from everybody. Let us know if we can do something. We'll do that as far as we can. I did receive a message from someone who said that he did not receive a response, and I sent it to the administration. So if y'all get a message, that was me too. Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank you all for your comments. I'm only going to speak to one thing, and that's going to be Mr. Keith Ward. No disrespect to anybody up here, but I've known the gentleman for quite some time. Just a little bit about him. Before he got on the board, I knew him as a band parent. He was a band parent and a very, very passionate band parent. So, you know, as sometimes you have a preconceived notion of how somebody's going to be when they get up here at the board table, right? So, and it happens quite often on many boards where they come up there and they're a one-issue person. And sometimes you think that somebody who's that passionate as a band parent is going to be up at this table pushing band all the time. That was not the case. What I discovered more about Keith at that point was his pure love of the district. And I can honestly say there may be people who love the district as much, but I don't think there's a person out there that loved this district more than Keith Ward did. And I really want to thank the superintendent for her words. We got the Capital Improvements Award, and she said in memory of Keith Ward, who had just passed away earlier in that day. And we got the award that evening. I couldn't help to myself And I think if you all can think back to when he was in good health, can you imagine how excited he would have been? I mean, he just gets utterly like giddy over stuff like that, right? I mean, and I can only imagine. So I was already hoping, to be quite honest, you kind of read my mind. I was hoping something would be said along those lines, and you said it. And it was perfect, and I just couldn't help the whole time when we were going through it and accepting the award, just thinking to myself, if Keith was here, I can imagine him just bouncing around like a, you know, a kid who just opened up their favorite gift of present at Christmas, you know? So, that's all I'm gonna say about it. He's gonna be missed, but, his memory will live on in this district, and his love of this district will live on. With that, meeting adjourned.